Hi, everyone, and welcome to Empowering the Opposition. My name is Dr. Nafis Alam, and our topic today will be social media addiction. We'll be talking about the pros and cons of social media. Social media obviously includes Facebook, Snapchat, Instagram, TikTok. There's, I'm sure, plenty others that I'm forgetting to mention now. But the idea of a social media addiction versus just using social media is that you're depending on social media for validation. You're depending on social media to essentially substitute for many elements of human interactions. And the cons of social media addiction have been covered quite comprehensively by other people and other channels and other areas of expertise. But I feel like the benefits of having a social media dependency, if you will, hasn't really been talked about in great detail. And true to Empowering the Opposition form, we wanted to cover this topic in a way that does it justice from both points of view, both the pro point of view as well as the con point of view. So first, let's just get the cons out of the way. In regards to social media addiction, studies have shown that children who develop a dependency on social media tend often to struggle with real life, in-person human interactions. One of the stories that I like to tell is that my little cousin had some of her friends over. She was like, it's probably like 9-10 years old. She had her friends over, and they were all sitting in the living room, and they were all on their phones. And when I came into the living room and I asked them, like, what's going on here? Why are you guys just on your phones? Are you texting someone who's not in the room with you guys? And the response was alarming, at least at the time, is that all of them, I think there were 5 of them, they were just texting each other. There wasn't a sixth person that wasn't there that was in the text thread. It was just a group chat that involved only the people that were in that living room together. So it was interesting, and I asked them like why they weren't just speaking with one another instead of texting each other. And they didn't really have an answer right away, but after giving it probably about 10-15 seconds of thought, one of my little cousin's friends said that, well, we wanted to have like a record of what we said. So this way, if anyone says that we didn't talk about this, then we can just pull up the text messages and say that, yes, we did. So it almost appeared as though they're keeping a record of past conversations, and this led me to the idea to sort of think about FOMO, fear of missing out, and also like a fear of being misrepresented or not understanding what had happened. So this way you're able to keep a record and then refer back on it in the future to be able to understand like what was said before. But yeah, human interactions do suffer, I should say, with a dependency on social media, because you're so used to interacting on social media that you're not fully capable sometimes of interacting in person. In addition to that, it can get out of hand where you sort of become a recluse and you just stay home or stay in isolation. And all of your validation, all of your life events, everything that you value comes from the number of likes that you get on Instagram, how many likes you get on Facebook, how many friends you have on Instagram versus, how many friends you actually have in real life. That is obviously one of the cons that studies have talked about in having a social media addiction. Of course, you've got some cognitive development issues. You've got eye strain from staring at a computer screen or your phone for long periods of time. These are just some of the cons that have been talked about in the past, but I did want to cover these here before moving on to the pros of social media dependency or social media overuse, if you will. The pro side of this particular conversation. So this way, we're progressing in the right kind of way. So the cons are definitely there. It's not to say that they're not, but the pros are there as well. And about those pros, First, having a social media dependency, it allows you to have instant validation, which sounds like a con, but it could be a pro. Let's say you're having a bad day. Let's say it's raining outside and you got stuck out there. You're just like everything that could go wrong. You know, the barista got your coffee order wrong. Whatever it is, everything just went wrong. You could simply pull out your phone. If you have a good social media presence, you could pull out your phone, post a picture, or, see what people are saying about you and see what people are saying to you. And right away, you experience a particular kind of high. And now, that positivity can get you through potentially the rest of your day. So that dependency, as long as it is in a positive way anyway, it could be good. Now, obviously, if you're going on it and people are talking smack about you and, people are saying that you shouldn't have posted that and, this isn't you and blah, 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 that'll obviously bring you down. That's a downside of dependency, of course, right? But if it's a positive social media profile that you've created for yourself where people are being positive to you, you're being positive to other people, then that kind of dependency could be good for you, where you can carry that over into your business, you can carry that over to your job, your school, your social interactions, so on and so forth. It also, with the social media dependency, social media addiction, you can have close connections with people who are across the street from you, as well as with people who are across the world. I have a lot of friends who are international. Many of you might know that I am an immigrant to the United States. I have some connections still overseas, and we stay in touch based on what they post and what I post. And I'm able to see some of my cousins growing up, some of the progress that they're making. And same thing for them with me, being friends with me on social media. I post pretty regularly, and as a result, they're able to understand what where I am in my life, and it's a good way to stay in contact with one another without getting on the phone individually. It's a wide net, right? So I can have 10-minute conversations with each of my cousins, each of my friends, each of my family members, and that'll take probably the whole day. Or I can post, a picture on, for example, I just, became a registered boxer. I just posted that picture, and I got a whole bunch of different responses from family and friends. Some of those responses weren't all positive because, what am I doing? I'm 37 years old, and I'm going into a combat sport where, I'm probably not going to do very well in it, but, it's a midlife crisis. That's a story for a different day. But it's a good way to stay in touch with people. It's very efficient. People don't often talk about how efficient social media use is. Yes, you can build an addiction. Yes, you can build a dependency on it. But how efficient is it to not have to reach out to every one of the people that follow you, whether it's family, friends, acquaintances, random people? You don't have to reach out to them individually. You can just post something and they'll see what you're posting. And when you have the time, you'll see what they're posting too in a very efficient fashion without having to reach out to them to find out, hey, what's going on with you today? You just look at their posts. Oh, so this person's going to Cabo this week. Oh, this person's hanging out with their Oh, this person's pregnant. Wow, okay, old high school friend. So it's an efficient way to go through all of your contacts, all the contacts that you've built in your life, and understand where they are in their lives. And if it's someone's birthday, you wish them a happy birthday, and then you just move forward. It's a very efficient way of living life, which is one of the primary reasons I feel that social media usage is not going to decrease. In fact, it'll likely increase. It's because of the efficiency of it. You don't have to call people. You don't have to have long text conversations. You can simply check out what they're doing on Snapchat, for example, those stories. There are some people that follow me, watch everything that I'm doing, and there's some people that I follow as well that I'll get story notifications of what they're doing and what they're up to today. And it's a good way to sort of stay in touch. And if it's something interesting, then I can comment on it. If they feel like I'm doing something interesting, then they can comment on it. Otherwise, it's just a good way to build that sort of connection, right? Otherwise, you might go without social media, that is, you might go weeks, months without knowing what your friends and family and acquaintances are up to. And then you call them up and you find out that, a couple months ago or a couple weeks ago, a major life event happened, but you wouldn't have known about it unless you called or unless they called you. And you're sort of late to the game, late to congratulate them, or late to say whatever you need to say. Social media can be a very efficient avenue for connection and contact. But then, in true Empowering the Opposition forum, the question might be, should human interaction be so much about efficiency? Shouldn't it be more about effectiveness? Shouldn't it be more about being in the moment and not just like scrolling, but just being in the moment with that person and just enjoying whatever it is that you're doing? And that's a good argument to make too, because too often, like, we'll defer to social media because of the efficiency. Maybe I'm not interested in what this person's doing, and then I move on to what that person's doing, and now that's interesting, so I'll sort of check in on that. Is that the right way to approach human interaction and human connection? Where, like, if you don't keep my attention for more than 10 seconds at a time or 15 seconds at a time with your Snapchat and Instagram stories, then I'm just moving on to the next. And in many ways, that might not be the right way to have human interactions, and that's certainly understandable. But in other ways, if you have a good blend of in-person communication and connections, in addition to social media communications and connections, it might not be such a bad thing to use social media to the point where it may be considered an addiction, or to the point where it may be considered a dependency. I will say that I wouldn't call it necessarily a social media addiction. That's another thing too. How do you define a social media addiction? Is it 4 hours a day? Is it 5 hours a day? I mean, that's sort of up in the air, right? I mean, obviously, if it's 10 hours a day, 12 hours a day, then you know that it's an addiction. But, falling short of those high figures, high usage rates, what constitutes an addiction? Or is an addiction based on what you're missing out on? If I'm using social media so much that I'm foregoing actual in-person communication and connections, then yeah, it might be considered an addiction, but it has to be defined more clearly for it to be, widely accepted as an addiction or dependency or just usage. What's use versus abuse, right? So with social media, as long as there's a balance there, it may be good for you. But even with Empowering the Opposition, maybe you're away from family and friends. Maybe you're so far away on business, on work, on deployment, if you have access to the internet and Wi-Fi and things like that. And, it's just a small taste of home. What's going on at home with your wife, with your husband, with your boyfriend or your girlfriend, your kids, your family. If you're not able to be there, being on social media when you do have the time to be on social media might be a good way to feel like you're still connected to the people that you're so far away from. And I think ultimately that's what we want. I don't think that people who are addicted to social media are that way because they don't yearn for human contact and human connection. I think it's quite the opposite. I think people are addicted to social media because they value human contact so much, they value human connection so much that they don't want to be away from it for too long. Even when they get home from a date or something like that, they might be on that person's Instagram or Snapchat or Facebook seeing, hey, let's see what they did for New Year's last year, or what was their Christmas like? What was their Thanksgiving like 2 years ago? What have they been up to with their lives? And, it's that human connection that I think people yearn so much, that look forward to so much, that sometimes results in an addiction or a dependency. Now, when people are foregoing in-person contacts and in-person connections, that might become an issue, or it might be something where people feel like they've had enough, and that this is the way that they want to live their lives, and they want to just stay in touch with people on social media. They have no interest in seeing people in person. Who are we to say that someone should be living their lives in a different way than they then they choose to. As long as they're not hurting themselves or hurting anybody else, shouldn't they have the right to live their lives the way that they see fit? Well, that's all the time we have for today. I'm Dr. Nafis Alam, and this has been Empowering the Opposition. See you next time.